distinguished guests, dear sisters of Award, dear brothers, good morning. It is indeed a great pleasure to be back in Nairobi. As Madam has said, come back, I have been coming back. And it's great to be here with friends and with kindred spirits. And I use the word kindred spirits because we are dealing with great institutions in Kenya. We're dealing with the CG centers, ICRAF. And as you know, these CG centers are known and respected for the great work that they do in the agri and the forestry sector, amongst others. And where one can find, I think we have here the audience of the finest brain working and generating cutting edge scientific data. And here I'd like to say a special thank you, recognize my friend Stella, who's here. And a big thank you to Wanjiru for her kind invitation and for her energy. I don't know where she gets it from. And in fact, I was mentioning yesterday to Nelson, quite demurely saying, how shy Wanjiru is. A true shrinking violet. Ladies and gentlemen, let me start with a story I read recently. Maybe many of you have heard it before, but I'll just mention it here. A young boy is involved in a traffic accident and is immediately rushed to the hospital for urgent surgery. In the bustle and chaos of the hospital environment, the surgeon strides into the operating room. Think of the quintessential surgeon brimming with confidence and authority, the A-type, one who knows instinctively how to take charge. Yet this distinguished surgeon looks down at the boy and gasps, I can't operate on this boy. He's my son. Indeed, the boy is the surgeon's son, yet the surgeon is not the boy's father. So how do you explain this riddle? I know that everyone in the room can find the answer immediately. It is simple. Mr. Surgeons is the boy's mother. Yet, I also know that plenty of educated and erudite people, no less, including plenty of educated and erudite women, do not see this at first blush. They puzzle over it, they circle around it, they suggest uncle, grandfather, stepfather. Answers that really make little sense. Ladies and gentlemen, despite all our games, this is unfortunately the persistent reality. Similar scenarios have also happened to me in the course of my career. I'll just share with you that when I was a university pro vice chancellor and find myself alone in the office, responding to a ringing phone, the typical question I receive on the other side is this: is this a secretary of Professor Gurib-Fakim? I said yes. I passed on to her immediately. Ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to thinking about women in powerful positions, we are often blinded by and stubbornly products of long embedded bias that tend to mire our thoughts. The higher up the status pecking order, up to and including the position of head of state, the more this tends to hold true. We are all aware of this. We fight it against it on a daily basis across Africa and the world. We are also aware that this attitude pulls us back and slows the evolution of our country, our region, our global economy. But these prejudices date back to the existence of mankind. This sort of entrenchment takes active, sustained, and dedicated effort to drive away. And it cannot be done in a single generation, but it must be done, and it must be done at all costs. We need a complete mindset shift for this 21st century, for the full and equitable economic participation of women in order to fully unleash all of the earning power of our national economies and eventually the global economy. It is not sufficient to make progress against ingrained gender inequality. We must eradicate it altogether. We must say collectively, let us dare to be the generation to make the definitive difference. Let us act together as a community of women and rise to conquer our own timidity, learn to take risk, defeat our own prejudices, and even subconscious antagonism towards other women to face up to the fact that the elimination of gender inequity is in reach. I'm afraid we discussed this yesterday, but I will have to quote Madeleine Albright, who once said, "There is a special place in hell for those women who do not help other women." The inverse of this is, women have special power to be advocates for themselves and each other. We must become aware of that power, and we must learn to unleash it. Ladies, ultimately, it will be for we, us women, to open the doors so that others may live and prosper. We need to direct that kindred spirit to help out the younger generation. Take our literal and figurative daughters by the hand and teach them to benefit through our experiences. And yesterday, when we were discussing in the course of the interview, we said we should all be telling our daughters, we are our grandmother's wildest dream. Thank you, Manju. Mind you, this is easier said than done. Women tend to disparage other women more than do men. That's the tragedy and the paradox. Being honest with ourselves and with each other about the subtle undercurrents that can result in competition winning out over mutual effort is the first essential step towards rooting out our weaknesses and freeing our better selves as individuals and as a sisterhood of women. So the question now is, how do we proceed? How do we build the critical mass of empowered, prosperous, and confident women who can drive our own destiny? Ladies and gentlemen, let us start with the basics: education. And as Madiba had said, education is the most powerful weapon that can be used to change the world. Mandela's belief had special leverage as applied to women. As another great world leader, Mahatma Gandhi, once said, educating a girl is educating a family, a community, a nation, and eventually the world. Educating women creates an amazing ripple effect, as an educated woman is likely to spend her resources on her family and on education and health of her children. I'm not going to compare how much men do, but I think they can decide. If the moral imperative to educate girls is not sufficient, the economic returns should be. And I think the IMF recently reported that a study of 60 developing countries revealed that the economic loss from not educating girls at the same level as boys amounted to something like 90 billion US dollars per year. Thus, educating a girl must not be perceived as a threat, but rather as both a blessing and as a practice that makes good economic sense. I am a product of that vision. My parents deeply believed in education for their children, no less for me than for my brother. Indeed, they were right. Indeed, my father was right, because I found in him my biggest cheerleader. Education has elevated me and given me that springboard of substance and self-confidence to aim higher. Good education empowers, breaks down barriers, promotes critical thinking, and frees the individual from exclusion, and in my case, insularity. Without a good education, we start life with a severe disadvantage, one that few are able to ever compensate for. This will become increasingly true for the future, given the technological world in which we live. For those without education, the future is beyond bleak. Conversely, for those with a good education, avenues of opportunity open up. Countries that have invested in education have shown that it leads not just to empowerment and access to opportunities, but also to reduction in gender inequality. But for all our progress, persistent gaps exist, and as I mentioned before, this tends to be increasingly true as we move up the ladder of seniority and therefore influence. While girls and young women are the majority of those who enter the biological, health and medical sciences in many countries, they fall out of the pipeline in numbers much greater than can do men as they move up the level of seniority. We must do and can do better. In 2015, for the first time in the history of the UN, science was recognized as having a central role to play in helping humanity achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Success in the SDGs will lead to a better world for all of us and to stick to what they say, to leave no one behind. This is where the investment in girls' education is critical, especially in developing countries. Unfortunately, it is precisely in these regions that the contribution of women and girls can make the biggest difference in stimulating the economy, but it is exactly there that we are not empowering enough women and enough girls with education and with the tools of technology. This is also where a technically driven government, and I insist on the word technically driven government, with science-savvy technocrats can make a big difference in driving the science agenda if we are to leave no one behind. This is where the science-trained child will be able to make a contribution to the development agenda of her community and her country. This is where I see convergence between the political and the science world, the drive towards generating tangible results on the ground. Ladies and gentlemen, in the 20th century, the United States of America showed the way by its trailblazing education policy that institutionalized the integration of races in education settings, favored science in the thick of the Cold War, and ensured equal education opportunities between the genders through the passage of Title IX. While these milestones may seem modest today, at that time, they were controversial and courageous. Today, the US is still reaping the benefits of these decisions, which have helped drive the country's economic leadership, with gender equality as a crucial component of their strategy. Small investments can result in large gains for girls. One extra year of primary school can boost earning potential by 10 to 20%. At the secondary level, an extra year can result in an impressive 25% boost in earning potential. Ladies and gentlemen, Mauritius, I'm very proud to say, we showed the way in the early 1980s. Education was made free in 1976, education for all. Now my country achieved big gains in our budding manufacturing sector. The same uneducated women who were cutting sugar cane could now manipulate machines and eventually program the software that run those machines. An educated woman contributes to the labor force, and when a woman thrives, the country thrives. Ladies and gentlemen, females represent over 50% of the world's population, yet the contribution of women is less than half of the many measured economic activities. Still today, nearly 1 billion women are excluded from full participation in the economy. Africa suffers particularly from this reality. The gender gap is almost 50% and a large contributor to lesser economic productivity in Africa than in fully developed countries. When women do progress beyond the lowest tiers of the labor market, they tend to remain in middle management positions, earning low pay and often in low status jobs. Not surprisingly, the informal sector has a high representation of women, and moreover, in this sector, employees tend to be unskilled, realize unstable earnings, and are left unprotected. And of course, women dominate in unpaid jobs, caring for children and the elderly, where they are not just uncompensated, but also unrecognized, unappreciated, and unprotected. Here I think of my own mother. Had she not dedicated her blood, sweat, and tears, her every ounce of energy to our family, I would not be standing here today talking to you. I salute her and all the women like her to toil every day to keep families whole and together. Thus, another clear message: the more women contribute, the better the economy fares. Eliminating the gender gaps in economic participation implies a big jump in income per capita, a vital measure for the economic well-being of the country. Those countries in the Middle East and North Africa that have experimented by investing in the economic and advancement of women have reported between 23 to 27% increase in GDP. And of course, it goes to follow that productivity begets productivity. The contribution of women in the paid workforce increases expendable income, which in turn spending capacity, which in turn drive a healthy economy. So, if we are to increase the purchasing power of women, the economy will do better. So ladies, be agents of change. Let's go shopping. Ladies and gentlemen, changes will happen when we make it a priority. Another area ripe for attention is law. In many countries, women are still being subjected to old inheritance law, and loans and bank accounts require a male co-signature, father or husband. Changes in laws can become powerful agents of change. Think of progressive countries like Sweden. Sweden's pro-family, pro-women policies have resulted in massive progress. Policies like publicly funded parental leave, quality affordable government subsidized childcare, free or subsidized early childhood education, individual instead of family income taxation, and tax credits or benefit for low-wage workers. Sweden has the highest female participation rate in the world, in part because of these policies that support families and children, and also places a premium on flexible work and parental leave policies. Is it only about policies? No. It is also about changing our mindsets to women generally. We need to sweep aside that macho attitude that has kept women behind for too long. One area that is happening is the field of precisely science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The ubiquity of technology and the centrality of science to sustainable development have influences far beyond the STEM fields themselves to create greater participation of females in many areas such as agriculture, and here we are here to celebrate 10 years of women in agriculture. Ladies and gentlemen, while with education and labor come another important element that will ensure full female economic empowerment: leadership. Female leaders have been few, but those who have made it to the highest level of leadership have had a lasting legacy. And I think of Catherine the Great, Elizabeth I, Wangari Maathai, and Marie Curie, my own role model. They are women who decline the well-beaten track and follow their own courageous and visionary trail. But the sad fact remains that the higher up you go the ladder, the fewer women we meet. In my country, there's less than 15% representation in the National Assembly. Fewer than 5% of Nobel Prize winners are women. One irony and tragedy is that women leaders have qualities that can result in better leadership because they tend to make decisions based on consensus, inclusion, caring, empathy, compassion, and focus on long-term sustainability. Yet, in unacceptable numbers, they are denied access. We must show that by being caring, we're not being weak. And conversely, toughness is not necessarily strength. We must help build confidence in our girls and younger women. It is denied to the girl child when she is told systematically from a tender age that she cannot become an engineer, or that physics and mathematics are too complicated for her. Her lack of confidence is also reinforced in her job. She tends to only apply for promotion when she feels she's 200% prepared, in contrast to a man who, at a much lesser level of preparation, will leap forward fast. Only by helping change this mindset will we reset the narrative. Now I will say something that I thought I would never say. In many sectors, especially in the political world, we may only achieve the goal of equality through quotas. The slopes are far too high for us to climb without some help towards the top. Quotas, unfortunately, may be a prop, but we need it in the initial stages. Role models and the availability of mentorship of successful women can be a critical success factor that needs to be plugged into the equation to achieve parity. For example, mandates on the proportion of women in parliament and in corporate boards may be necessary for the immediate and even foreseeable future. One hopes that quota are temporary necessity, but they may be a necessity for now. I myself describe myself as an accidental president. I never chose the world of politics, yet this world chose me. I reached that position by taking big risks, a huge gambles against all odds. Now I'm wondering whether I should have taken that risk at all. Risk-taking, as well as the acceptance of this loneliness at the top, of value for both politics as well as in business. And it is precisely this appetite for risk and self-confidence that must be inculcated in the girl child and the younger women. It is not taught in business school, and less so in our communities where many women are still disadvantaged. So to conclude, my message is simple. We need to change the mindset in our 21st century. We need to do away with this ingrained mentality that works against women empowerment. We need to keep daring to make the difference, and we need to keep investing in the ingredient that will provide for the empowerment of empowerment. Let us all start looking out for each other. Let us create a world where that little girl out there in any village in Africa can grow up prepared and able to fulfill her potential. Let us ensure that nobody ever again will doubt that an African woman cannot become a top engineer, doctor, or that minister, and that she can lead because she has the education, the intelligence, the charisma, the drive, and maybe more importantly, the confidence, compassion, and caring attitude that this fragmented world needs right now and beyond. To succeed, we must dare. If we dare, we will succeed. And I read this quote from my uncle's book one day. It says, "Success goes to those who dare. It rarely goes to the timid."